Hi, my name is Shamira, and today I'll be talking about how that is not schizophrenia. If you guys have ever watched the movie Split, or if you guys taken a psychology course and you're familiar with both DID, dissociative identity disorder, or schizophrenia, then you guys will know what I'm talking about. So in the movie Split, there's a character, the main character, his name is Kevin. He has 23 personalities, and out of all 23, one personality in particular tries to combine all personalities to push him to the forefront so that he can become the core personality. Now, the core personality in DID is essentially the original person, if you will. And according to the Cleveland Clinic, DID is defined as a psychological disorder that the patient will display two or more distinct personality traits, right? So the symptoms include depersonalization, where they essentially they're not feeling like themselves. You wouldn't normally do the things you like to do. You just don't really have no sense of self. Derealization, same thing, except with reality. They feel like the world isn't real, like they can't get a grip of reality. And amnesia now, with amnesia, they usually forget, and they have like these blank spots in their memory due to the other personalities taking over and becoming that person, essentially. So if you guys remember, like as a child, if something traumatic happened to you, you kind of wouldn't think about it, and a lot of people will identify that as childhood trauma. Now, people with DID usually experience some severe childhood trauma, and it causes them to essentially create a new life or a new person for them, and that's what leads to that. Now, the abuse can be sexually, physically, mentally, emotionally, whichever. It's some form of traumatic abuse. As for schizophrenia, as stated in the Pearson Psychology textbook, AP edition, schizophrenia was once known as dementia praecox, and that means out of one's mind before their time. Schizo was then renamed by Eugene Blair, a Swiss psychiatrist, to better illustrate the division of the mind. So he decided to split it up, like schizo means split, and phrenia is basically the mind, your thoughts, that's your feelings, your emotions, right? So in an article, Who Gets Schizophrenia by Age, Sex, and More, Starkman only states that only 1% of the world's population lives with schizophrenia. Then he even points out the symptoms of schizophrenia. And the symptoms of schizophrenia usually are, they have one distinct personality, I should say. They have these extreme delusions, and there's different types of delusions, and they have hallucinations, both auditory and visual hallucinations. So if you guys are familiar with the story A Beautiful Mind, like I mentioned before, in the movie, later on in his life, when he begins teaching and things as such, he starts to have these delusions, which we will call delusions of persecution, that people are constantly out to get him. And he also has these hallucinations of this guy that he thinks is his best friend, and he's like talking to this man. And later on, when he's admitted into a psychiatric ward, he realizes that that guy wasn't even real at all. Anyway, so between the two, the key difference is with DID, there's two personalities or more. With schizophrenia, there's one. The symptoms vary with both, but the cause of both are completely different. Whereas with DID, it's usually childhood trauma, and symptoms then begin present themselves and manifest in a younger person's life. Versus with schizophrenia, it's caused by environmental stress and the overproduction of dopamine in the brain. Now, if you guys remember when you were a kid and you said something completely outrageous, your parents will say, oh, you have an overactive imagination. That's essentially what both of these disorders are an overactive imagination. Now, not to discredit and not to say that these aren't very real things, but that is something that we have to deal with today. And yeah, thank you guys.